All right, we're back to the Bobcat 773. Fixing a few things related to the bucket. You can see there, the bucket lock has issues. We're going to replace the levers. Before we do that though, there was a large gap here because this had bowed and this had bent. So the bucket basically, or the holder, went straight across and then began to taper down. So there was about this much of a gap where it wasn't holding the bucket. So to correct that, you can see I placed the bucket straight down. I have just a solid bucket. I have some metal here. Looks like a magnet, but it's not. It's some metal. Pieces of metal I cut. Had several. Used several to do this. I put one under here. I was able to hammer this flat. So now the gap's about consistent all the way across. Took another piece of metal, wedged it under there, filled in the gap between this point here and the bucket. That way I wasn't hammering straight onto the bucket, because the bucket can flex. So put those in there. You can see my strike points all along here. Hammer this flat. As soon as I got this to where I thought was okay as far as being straight instead of bowed, I began hitting here, and this pushed this arch back into the bucket. So now we have a halfway decent amount of metal reaching in there and grabbing. All right, this is going to happen again. If you don't do something about this, this will happen again. This is cut out here. It's weakened it because it's no longer have a solid piece. So it's a little weaker here than it would be on this end, which is why it always happens here. So to fix this, I want to put a gusset from here about 5 inches down. So that's going to end up kind of looking like that. It's fresh paint. I just painted that. I just welded that gusset in. Keep in mind, I am not a welder, and I'm using a flux core wire. So my weld did look good, but I had to beat the crap out of it to get the flux off. And I did not grind off the splatter, so it looks a little rough. But I think we can live with that. It's going to look a little rough anyway. I mean, look at it. The whole thing looks a little rough. So that should keep that strengthened from bowing. That should help that from lifting up so that this can come together. It's not too tall, so it won't interfere. Won't interfere with getting my arms back over where they need to be. So did that there. Also had the same problem here. This was pulled out a little bit. This was bowed. Fixed that, hammered that in. You can see this one's a little tighter. It didn't have as much of a bend. Was able to get that up in there pretty flush, pretty flat. Looks pretty good. Put that gusset in there. Hopefully that'll strengthen that a little bit. We're going to repeat that process over here. All right, here's the gusset that I cut. Pretty good fit. Now I just have to prep it. All right, I got my welding area ground off. I'm brushing off all the dirt and rust. So after I paint it, after I weld it, I can paint it. To get all that done anyway. There's my area. Here's my piece. Ground it, beveled it, so I can have a good solid welding point there. And this should work fine. All right, finish cleaning it off, and then we'll put some metal to it. All right, let me just point out one thing. I did bend that, and I did strike it with a hammer. Matter of fact, struck it with that hammer right there and bent that. But before I did that, I heated it up. I don't suggest striking that and trying to bend it before you heat it up. Also, you have to be very careful. You don't want to heat up too much. You don't want to heat these up and ruin the seals in here. All right, so as soon as I'm done here, haven't heated this up, I will re-grease this. Same goes here. Don't forget to grease both of them. All right, and there it is, finished with my bubblegum weld that I have to totally destroy with a chipping hammer to get the flux off. But you know what happens when you use flux core wire. So we'll get it painted, maybe look a little better. We'll see. Here, let's do some camera magic. Let's add a paint. So how about that? It dries into a satin finish. So it says I'm using some Valspar Project paint plus primer satin, indoor outdoor wood, metal, wicker, metal, more. Basically it's just some junk I had sitting around. Better than exposed metal. Don't want your metal to rust. Definitely don't want it to flash rust. Alright, so anyway, hopefully that'll solve that problem from bending. We'll see. We shall see. Alright, the next thing we're going to conquer is we're going to have to insert the shaft here, weld it, put the arms on, get the bucket locks. Have to remove this shaft. Try to get the locks back working. Alright, let you know how it goes. Alright, took the old locking arm out. Still have to remove that. It's in there. I'm going to go ahead and insert this. I coated it with anti-seize, even though it does have a grease point there in the hole right there. Went ahead and coated it with some anti-seize. Go ahead and slide that in place just to store it. Later on I have to put the spring pin in. Spring pin joins the clevis there. Holds that on. So first task we've got to accomplish right now is getting rid of this. By the way, this happens to be this. You can't see it because it's underneath. I'll go up underneath there and show it to you. There's the piece hanging down. So I need to install this in that hole. It should look about like that right there when it's done. Alright, so let's get that accomplished and weld this in. Alright, was able to use a unibit. Open up my hole. Got a few little pieces in there that need to be cleared out so that I can get it down in there. But what I think I'll do is get the die grinder with a stone and clear that little bit right there off. That little bit right there, and that's what's holding this. That's what's holding it from going through. So daylight there, daylight there. You can see I'm hitting here, and I'm hitting up there. I'll use a stone, get that knocked out. Alright, I'm going to remove this one. Got to remove the spring pin here. I'm waiting on my air to build up before I use my die grinder. Got my die grinder there with the stone on it. So I'll go ahead and remove this spring pin. This is not a punch, but I'm going to use it as one. Need something that can get up above there so that you can hit it with a hammer. So let's do that. Alright, knocked it down flush with this, made it real easy. Now I'm going to have to actually use a punch to get that out because this is naturally a little wider than the hole is, so can't use it. So what I will be using is this is a punch. Punch that out. Now you don't have to hit this extremely hard, it's not that tight. So let's go ahead and knock this out. Alright, I've got it knocked out. So I can pull the clevis loose. Set that there. Now you can push that through that way. And that's probably the easiest way to get this out. Send it on through the bottom. So I just knock it on through. You see there, sticking out. There you go. Quick and easy. All right, back to this hole. We got enough air pressure. We're gonna clean that up a little bit. Get that cleaned up, and we'll get that ready to weld. All right, hit it with the die grinder. Now, that will sit in there. Not too much of a gap. We can work with that. Got to put a little couple tacks on there. Get the height about right. Get the arm installed so that it's functioning properly. We'll clean all this up first and test fit it. All right. So let's get it cleaned up. Get it assembled. All right. I want to point out something. You saw all the shavings here from drilling the hole open. And you saw me earlier put this retaining pin in, and you see all the gum from the anti-seize. What that did is, as I drilled this hole and I blew all this off, that caught any of those metal shavings, prevented them from getting in that hole. So since they're not in the hole, I don't have to worry about trying to clean that hole out. I'll pull this back out, clean it off, make sure I get all the shavings off of it, and then reinstall it. All right, I've removed it. I've recoated it. I'm going to reinstall it in the hole. Get it in there. So when it comes out, this angle is to be down. That angle is to be down when it's in. So I've got it shoved in there a good long way. Should be out of the way. Alright. Alright, I'm going to assemble this. I want to assemble this and kind of show you something here. One of these holes is a little more beveled. Let me get it focused here. One of these holes is a little more beveled than the other. It's easier to hammer that spring pin in from the bottom than it is from the top. So you want to use that hole that's a little more beveled, which in this case is this side right here. You want to assemble your part so that this is on bottom. That way you can hammer that spring pin in from the bottom. So assemble it. Put your spring over your clevis pin. I'm going to install this part. Go in that hole. As soon as alright, threw it in the floor. Didn't mean to. Alright, so you'll put that spring on. And you get this piece. It goes on here. That pin slides in the shaft. That hole. Slide onto the pin and into the shaft. And as you can see right through it. So when you do that, you have to compress the spring and then you'll screw this in. Parts are done. Hey, man, that was easy. Get my wife to do the laundry like that. Whoo! Anyway, there's the part. It's together. Got it tight. You can see the spring is a little compressed there. I'm beginning to wonder if this one is screwed in tight. Probably not. I'll have to double check it. The nut on. Alright, got the assembly together. It's not tight, but I don't want to tighten it just yet. I don't want to tighten it until I get all the parts in. I got to cut this out. Got to cut that out still. And then install all my parts. But there they are. They're ready. So they're ready. Go over to this side. Alright, I've cut it out. I've tightened my parts. And here's what I'm trying to avoid. Alright, I do not want this arm hitting this ridge right here. So you see, if I can get the autofocus in there, I have a little bit of a gap. I've propped it up with my wire brush right here. Kind of sort of try to keep it falling. So what I'm gonna do is slide it in there, wedge it just a little bit, because as you can see, this is leaning. It actually needs to be over that way just a little bit. Instead of like this, it needs to be like this. So I've got to figure out how to get that in there, maintain that gap, get this as near perpendicular to that hole down there as possible. So that's the challenge. All right, so I'm gonna pull this out of the hole and mark it with some wax so I know where the line is, and I'm just gonna hold it according to a wax line, I believe. All right, coming up next, welding. All right, I prepped my hole a little bit, prepped my part just a little bit, got it fit in the hole about where I think it should be. I've got it pretty close to where I think the shaft needs to be able to operate without issue. We do have quite a bit of distance here to operate on, so there is a little bit of forgiveness in here. So we're going to attack it, operate it, see what happens. All right, watch that weld magically appear. All right, put a few tacks, 3 tacks to hold it in position. Put the arm on. You can see I got it locked. Pulls up. Hold steady, down, and lock. Up. Only thing I don't like about it is I'm dragging right in here. Of course, I really didn't alter this in any way that I'm aware of. So the arm hits here, stops before it hits this, and look around here, we're fully retracted, so we're good. All right, this is fine. So I can weld that one into place and call it even. All right, got all the parts off. We're going to finish welding. See what we get. All right. Tack the weld on there. It's not great. Again, I'm not a welder. I'm an electrical guy. I just do this because I'm too freaking cheap to pay somebody else to do it most of the time. Anyway, we're going to spray paint that and go from there. I put some tape on the pivot point. Oh, so let me get the paint out of the nozzle here. All right, put some tape on there. I don't want my pivot point painted. Okay, so there you go. Welded in place. Now, when I'm done with the other side, I'll tilt it up, weld the back side, and call it good from there. Although there's not a lot of weight associated with this, so this side welded is probably good enough, but we're not going to leave it that way. All right, so we'll go ahead and assemble it. We'll put my bolt in there. See if I can hold this phone. I'll hold my bolt. There's my bolt and my shaft right there. What we'll do is we'll bring this around here. Try to get them close enough to do both of them at the same time. Oh, that's not working. Anyway, that's my idea. Get those together. And put the spring on. I grab the washer. Put the washer on. I grab the nut. Put the nut on. There we go. How about that? All right, and we can tighten that down just a little bit. Go ahead and tighten it up. Gotta load that spring just a little bit. Of course, I don't know how much, what my torque should be. I'm just throwing on there what I think is good. And put enough load on the nut to keep the nut from coming off all at the same time. Should be good about right there. My nut down. Operate it. Maintaining my clearance in there. You can see there, I'm not hitting it. It's good. Look at there. Comes up. Got my left hand handle on my left hand side of my machine. Well, Frank's machine again. Everything I pretty much will be doing on the Bobcat will probably always be Frank's machine. But usually Frank's pretty capable. He doesn't need me doing it, but again, he's out of town, so I'm helping him out. So anyway, got that on there, and seems to be working just fine. Again, got this little play here. This little play is letting this slide on the metal because I've got it horizontal. When I get it vertical, won't be as much rubbing here. And but as you can see, there's not a lot of play in there. But it operates just fine. It operates over the whole length. It actually retracts fully and it locks fully. Got my pivot pin in the same hole that it came out of. Everything looks good. I don't think we can ask for anything better than that. All right, we'll move on to the next side where I have everything piled up because I was using it as a work shelf. And we'll get this one done. First off, cut this out. All right, I used the angle grinder. Cut the top part off. The bottom part is still there. So I'll use a unibit just in case you were wondering what a unibit was earlier. This is a unibit. This, folks, is a Harbor Freight Special, and it cuts pretty darn well. First time I've used it, of course, but it cuts pretty darn well. Harbor Freight Special. Don't knock it till you try it, baby. All right, got that cut off. Used my unibit, drilled it down there. This is approximately 1 inch in diameter. Went to my unibit to the 1 inch width. Yeah, I drilled this out with my unibit till I got down to the 1 inch mark, as I was saying. And then I took my hammer and what I was using for a punch, this, which is actually the adjustment bar that you use to adjust the upper link on a 3-point hitch. Put it under there, hammered off the bottom pieces. You can see right there, I drilled down in there pretty good. They came right off. Just had to use the hammer and this, what I'm calling a punch. Knock those loose. Now I got to clean up the hole again. Use my die grinder here and make it so this will fit in this hole. All right, so we'll get that done and then we'll start assembly. All right, took my stone to it. Pivot now fits through there. All we have to do now is find an adequate welding point. We'll use the other side as an example. Weld it. All right, all right, all right. Before we do that though, we'll clean up our mess. See, this time instead of putting the shaft in, I actually inserted a rag in there to keep all the debris out of the cylinder there. So let's clean this up and then get to welding with a little bit of prep work, of course. All right, got this right side, right hand installed. There we go. Retracted. Anti-seize. And then lock. So there you go. Retracted. Locked. Works well. Not a problem. So there you go. Replacing the locking levers on a Bobcat 773. Not just any Bobcat 773, Frank's Bobcat 773. Alrighty. Hit like and subscribe, it really helps. If you have any recommendations or comments, go ahead and leave them. If I can figure out how to use YouTube, I'll actually read them. Alright guys.